What's up? I'm Chris, and I am an alcoholic. Getting warm up here. So I've been here before, but it has been about a year and a half or so since I've spoken here. So hopefully you haven't heard me before. If you have, I'm going to try to be present instead of do the shit I know that people like to hear, and just share from my heart. So hopefully it'll be different from last time you heard it. I'll get the weird shit out of the way. I got sober at 19. I'm 44. You don't have to do the math. I am still sober. So it was June 18th, 2001, and I did not decide to get sober that day. I decided to do drugs that day. Just like I had done the night before, which if I had fucking known, can I curse? If I had fucking known that June 17th, 2001 was going to be the last night I ever drank, I would have done a whole lot more than 3 joints and 4 Smirnoff Ices. But that's all I can get my hands on. And that night sucked. To be honest, it was not the worst night that I had had. I've had hospitalizations, overdoses, disappointed really important people in my life and watched them after that. It really wasn't a special night at all. But I woke up the next day with a plan to use after work, and weird shit went down that day. My parents found some stuff, and long story short, they were questioning me when I got home from work and wouldn't let me go out. And as I mentioned, I was only 19, so that sort of mattered that they said I couldn't go out. And I was in my bedroom contemplating death because I didn't want to use anymore. And I couldn't imagine not using anymore. There was no place in time or space where I was comfortable using, not using. Alive sucked. So I was like, you know what? Dead. So I open my bedroom door, and my dad is actually about to knock. And for the first time in over a decade, when he asked me if I was okay, I told him the truth. And as the words were coming out of my mouth, I was like, shut up. What are you doing? You know, I was quarantined in my home for 5 days until rehab had a bed. I'm going to backtrack a little bit just to tell you a little about what led up to that moment, or why I would even open up to my dad and tell him I was using. A couple of highlights. 14, alcohol poisoning. I completely ruined my best friend's family vacation by almost dying and needed to get my stomach pumped. It was the first time that I experienced what I would experience over and over and over again, that once I start, I'm not even present after a certain point. Not only can't I stop, I wasn't even there, but I was still drinking. And then when I decided to stop, that didn't matter. Way back at the age of 14, I made a decision to stop drinking. My grandma's an alcoholic, my dad's an alcoholic. I just had alcohol poisoning. Maybe I just won't do that anymore. The story would suck if it ended there. It didn't at all. It just kept going and going, and I experienced that over and over again, the trying to stop and then not being able to, and then starting again with the idea that it was going to be just fine, or I was going to figure out a way, or I was just going to smoke weed over and over and over. 16, ended up in the psych ward, so much more comfortable with the idea that I'm crazy than I'm an alcoholic. And I remember people in that psych ward sharing about their alcohol use and their issues, and their cocaine use. And I was like, I do not have that problem. I'm just going to stop. Again, I made this resolute decision that I'm just not going to touch it anymore. Because you know what? I don't want to end up here again. Being in the psych ward convinced me I wasn't crazy. There was Group A and Group B. I was in Group B. We were the alcoholics and drug addicts. And Group A was stepping over cracks in the fucking floor. And they had a different group. But mine was full of drug addicts and alcoholics, foreshadowing my life. And I'm sitting there I'm just going to stop. And I made it 3.5 weeks. Because it was amazing that I had made it 24 days without smoking weed or drinking, I'm just going to smoke a little. I obviously deserve it, right? And again, the back and forth, wanting to stop and not being able to over and over and over. When I ended up in rehab at 19, this bitch asked everybody, who's relapsed before? And I raised my hand. And she was like, oh no, honey, this is your first rehab. You've never relapsed before. And I was like, what the fuck has been happening the last 6 years? Like, I stop and then I start again. How is that not relapsing? You know, just because I haven't done your program or gone to your weird cult meetings before doesn't mean I have or have not relapsed. I have been relapsing over and over again, trying to stop and having no power whatsoever to do so. But I wasn't comfortable with the idea of trying to find a power at all. In fact, the let go and let God sign when I got there was having me try to remember exactly how many turns it was since the last gas station. I remember on the way up, I was like in the middle of nowhere in upstate New York, Walton. Never heard of it before. And just cows. And we're just going further and further from civilization and cigarettes and just like further from everything I want in life, and ended up at this serene farmhouse, you know, this beautiful little miserable paradise that I walk in, and like I said, there's these signs about God, and I'm in the wrong place. You know, this isn't going to work for me. Actually, I'm not an alcoholic. I want to learn how to drink like a lady and stop shoving Coke up my nose. Can you help me with that? No. They're like, that's not really how it works here. We don't do any drugs. And I was like, that sucks. And then on the way out of my intake, as I'm like, again, trying to recount just how far I need to go to get to a gas station, I catch a cute glimpse of a cute guy smoking a cigarette, tattoos, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna give sobriety a shot. You know, I'm just gonna see what happens. Like, at least spend the night here. You know, my get out of here scheme is like hang out with that guy scheme now, right? So, kept me busy. Don't recommend that. But it definitely kept me in rehab. You know, whatever gets you there, whatever keeps you there for the time. I was, you know, I'm messy today. Like I'm still a mess, but like I was like a 5-alarm requiring hazmat suits about to be deemed unlivable and demolished by the town situation at that time in my life. So there I was, rehab, 19 years old. And by the time I left there, I had like 30 days. I had never had 30 days. And I went to a meeting and I met this lady who had gone through the same rehab I did. They like hooked us up. She lived not far from me. And I was like, well, you'll be my sponsor, you know? And she's like, oh, okay, sure. And, you know, she had like fallen and gotten sober. God bless her. I was like, I don't think we have the same story, but like, I need help, right? So she helped me. I called her and complained about my dad every day. And we went to meetings and we talked about her problems and my problems. And I struggled. I had in the back of my head all of the ideas of what you should and shouldn't do in recovery and early recovery and don't get in relationships. And I'm like, who's next? You know, like, what do you mean don't get in a relationship? You know, don't stop smoking in the first year was my favorite. That one I really liked. Aside from that, I was really like a ball of flames my entire first year. I had a lot of amends to make when I finally made them for my behavior while drinking, and a shit ton of amends to make for my behavior while sober and not well. So my whole first year was pretty much a shit show. And I stayed sober though, and I there is no other explanation than I was supposed to. There really is nothing that I did or could take, you know, credit for my first year. I did go to meetings. I went to a lot of meetings, and I did have a sponsor, and I did try to do the steps, and I tried, is about all I did. I tried. I was at this big book study. It wasn't even an AA meeting. It was another fellowship that uses our literature, and they were reading the difference between a hard drinker and an alcoholic, and being an alcoholic with a whole year sober, I was really identifying with a hard drinker. Like, I was 19, now I'm 20. Maybe it was a phase. Maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe all that stuff didn't happen to me, actually, where it did. All the stuff they list, like, warning of a doctor becomes operative, you become ill, family and friends are leaving you, all that stuff. A hard drinker can just stop, and all those things happened to me, and I couldn't just stop. But I wasn't remembering all that. So this crazy chick, long story short, comes up to me after that meeting, and she's like, "You got a sponsor?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do." She's like, you got a big book? I was like, "I sure do." And she asked me if I was on any steps. I was like, "I'm on 3, but you know what? I might not even be an alcoholic. I think I'm a hard drinker." She's like, "Sounds like you're on step 1 there, killer." A whole year sober, and I didn't even know if I was an alcoholic. "Hi, my name is Chris. I'm an alcoholic 365 times. I've said that shit. And I'm more concerned about where we're going after the meeting than what's going on in my spirituality or who I'm affecting or what I'm doing in my life." So she had a point. I wasn't even sure I was an alcoholic. And I started meeting with her. She lived all the way in Rockville Center. I lived in Melville. And I drove there every week. And she read the big book to me like I was a 5-year-old. And something started to shift. I realized for the first time that once I start, I can't stop, and once I stop, I can't stay stopped, and that though I'm sober a whole year, my life is still a ball of flames because I'm attempting to manage it, and I still can't, even sober. I still can't manage my life. There's a line in the big book that says that we're delusional if we think we can wrestle or wrest satisfaction out of this world if we only manage well. And it's like my favorite line in the book because I come up against it every day, no matter how long or short I'm sober. I come up against this idea that, like, if I manage well or do all my tasks or do things perfectly or right, that I'll be happy. The big book says it's delusional. So I get to, like, digest that on a daily basis. I wasn't digesting it that well back then, but it was the beginning. It was the beginning of it. And I started to do this work. Step 2, there is no God. What are you talking about? I could not comprehend it, but when I realized just how screwed I was, fine, I'll talk to the wall, and I'm not calling it God, I'll call it Amelia. It's a fucking fairy, right? You guys said I could pick anything. It's a fairy named Amelia. Every day I'd wake up, I'd talk to the literal wall, because there's no fairy named Amelia, and I'd say, "Thank you for helping me wake up this morning, and thank you for keeping me sober at night." That's what I did. That's where my relationship with God started. And I'm not going to say that it's come very far, to be honest. I still don't know what God is. But I do believe that when I'm alone, I'm not alone. And I connect to something. I don't really know what it is. For some people, what it is very, very important. And that is a beautiful thing when that's a part of your connection to God. But to me, the connection is more important than the conception. And I am connected. I'm connected to something, whether it's deep within me or within each of you or, by Saturn. I have no idea where it is or what's going on exactly with it, but I know that somehow I'm connected to it. So, fine. I started talking to the wall, and I was so stuck on step 3 with my sponsor, who I called every day and complained about my dad too. And so she had me reading it over and over again every day out of the step book, which is a beautiful essay on step 3, but absolutely in no way tells you how the fuck to do it. So I had it memorized and still would wake up in the morning and be like, "I'm going to be a good person today." And then I was a bitch. I suck at step 3. I guess to me, the idea of turning my will and my life over to the care of God was like, be nice, and I couldn't even do that. So I just thought I sucked at 3. But she said 3 frogs are on a log. One decides to jump off. How many frogs are on a log? And I like to explain it a little differently. You decide to go to the beach, but you're on your couch. And there's a bunch of steps you have to take to actually go to the beach, right? You got to get your ass off your couch, get all your stuff together, walk out of your house, lock your door, unlock the car, get in the car, drive to the beach, get all your shit out of the car, lock the car, go sit your ass down on the beach. Like a bunch of steps, right? A bunch of things you have to do to make your decision come to fruition. And so that was what I was missing with step 3. I was like, great idea. Like, when's it going to happen? If step 3 was actually turning my will and my life over the care of God, there'd only be 3 steps. But there's like 9 others because I can't do 3 without actually doing other shit to make that happen. So she has me start writing this list of people I'm pissed at, and I am loving it, right? Couldn't wait to get started. I've had 2 different types of sponsees, just like me, and then I'm not mad at anyone people. I'm like, I don't know what to do with you. I have over the years had sponsees that have helped me with that, where they're like, can I make a list of who I'm sad at? And I'm like, wow, I've never thought about that. So I throw that at sponsees. They're like, I'm not mad at anybody. I'm like, yes, you are. You just don't know it. But anyway, I loved the first 2 columns of the 4th step. And then it got weird. Then she's like, well, what does it make you feel? Or like, what does it affect? And I was like, it makes me mad. It affects my anger. I really had never thought deeper than that in my entire life. 20 years on this planet, had never gone deeper when it came to anger. And I don't think I had felt much more than anger or high or sleeping. Like, that was pretty much it since childhood. So that was new and weird. And it took me a while, but I made this list, and I eventually dealt with all of my transgressions toward other people as well. And looking at my behavior, shocker, that's actually part of the equation. In fact, it's actually the entire equation. When I get to amends, now, like, the pizza pie is like all me. I don't get to be like, oh, this is my part. Like, if like a camera was only following me, what would it see? I'm being a bitch to my husband. Doesn't matter that I had a hard day. 5 minutes, thank you. Doesn't matter that I had a hard day. It doesn't matter that my mom's being a bitch. I'm being a bitch. Like, that's what I have to look at. Wow. So real quick, my first 5th step would have walked in if like 16-year-old me, slightly younger me walked by, I would have kicked her in the mouth at the beginning of my 5th step. By the end of my 5th step, I'm not saying I would have hugged her, but I was starting to feel a little more connected to her. And I wasn't so concerned about running away from who I once was. There was like a desire to maybe integrate it just a little bit. And that integration has continued over these decades. And it's a beautiful thing. And it's also weird. You're like in a meeting at work, and like someone walks in with a name of like some dude you used to know in like a weird way. And it's like all of that's like right there now when you're like fully integrated. It's weird, but it's cool. So 6 and 7 were this understanding of something I mentioned earlier, that like I don't even have the power to be nice. Like, I need help with this thing in the universe, this God thing. I need help to even be a good daughter. It's far more than just help me not drink. It's like, help me be a decent human being in all aspects. So that's what 6 and 7 boiled down to for me. And then 8 and 9, I have some cool amends stories. I don't have too much time to tell, but I'll say that the book's math is pretty right on, about 9 out of 10 times. It goes really well. And then there's the one that's like, you're awful, and I never want to see you again. And I don't care that you're sorry or want to make right. And that's okay. We will be gratified, grateful, and satisfied with the result. Either way, if we go in with that frame of mind. Step 10 is something I get to do on the fly. Like, I'm in CVS and being a bitch. I get to apologize immediately to the person I was just rude to, who had absolutely no reason for me to say or act the way I just acted. I don't have to like take that home and feel bad and ruin their day. Like, we get to have a moment, like a little God moment in CVS, It's kind of cool. 11 is a cool way to not have to do 10 and 9 if you stay up on it and stay connected. Kind of works like that. And then 12 has been a really big part of my life. Speaking, carrying the message to other alcoholics and other addicts in general. I'm in way too many fellowships. And I take a lot of people through the 12 steps because it's helped me. And after all these years, I've been to a lot of funerals and wakes and shivas. But I have been to the hot guy on the porch when I got sober. He died when I had 4 months sober. So I've been to a lot of them. But for every one of those I've been to tenfold anniversaries. We do recover. All of us in this room in this moment, it's a fucking miracle. Just take it in. Many people would kill for the opportunity to be in a meeting and alive today. So we are blessed. Thank you for letting me share.